Hi everyone, Kathy Beltran with Sacred Dance with Trance. I'm super excited because I have our fellow member, Sheila French here today. This is her part 2 interview. And Sheila is a trance clairvoyant medium and teacher of her own school, Ursham Star School of Mediumship and Psychic Courses. And this is in Folkestone, Kent. So I'm super excited to have you back here, Sheila. I'm so grateful for you to do this part 2 interview on your ongoing developing of your physical mediumship. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here with us again.
No, thank you very much for asking me, Kathy. I enjoyed the last one, so I thought I'd give it another go.
Oh, yeah. And we've had to wait because we were supposed to do this before, and then I had power outages. I had something happen.
You had a thunderstorm.
Oh, thunderstorms.
You had a big thunderstorm.
So I think we had to wait, what, 6 weeks or more for this?
Well, I had to go and acquire my suntan and have my summer rest first.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so if you haven't seen Sheila's part 1 interview, you can find that on my YouTube channel, Kathy Beltran, or in the group. So if you haven't joined the group, join the group. So much activity going on in there. But it will be on that interview, we talked about her trance mediumship. Fabulous interview, definitely check it out. Okay, so you can get in touch with and connect with Sheila at www.urshamstar.co.uk. All the links will be below the post of the video, so you can easily connect there. Another thing that Sheila has going on is she has 5 CDs, 5 CDs, I believe, right? Yep. One is called The Great Way of Knowing, Power of the Breath, Enhancing the 3 C's, Trance Made Simple, and Beyond the Horizon. So you can actually get those through the website, Sheila?
You can, yep. Website's just been launched, a brand new website today.
Awesome, awesome. I know that in our first interview, we talked about EEG headsets, right?
Yep.
And so there's information on that as well on the website?
Not at the moment, that's ongoing. We're trying to get more information from the manufacturers. But on the website, it talks about a conference that we're running next year where we will use more information that we've taken from the EEG headsets. So it's an ongoing story. But if anybody wants to know how to purchase them, then I can give them the details. They just message me.
Can you talk a little bit about the conference? Because I know that you posted that a little bit back. Can you?
That's right. We're just about to launch the finished website for bookings next week. And I'm working with 6 universities for research programs in the UK and have been for about 2.5 years now. But along the way, I met a wonderful gentleman, Marcus Sparks Sorensen from Kent and Canterbury University, who was doing a Life Between Lives research program. He invited us over, my colleague Charlie Kelly and myself, to do his research, which was to measure a 21-point EEG cap. If anybody knows anything about EEG, that measures everything that's going on in your brain, literally everything. So 21 different readings about the activity within your brain. While we did his research. And at the end of it, I said to him, do you know, I'd love to give a trance sitting wearing one of these. And he said, well, we've got time in the laboratory. Everybody's gone home. Let's do it. So he filmed me giving a private consultation to my colleague. So in that instance, my guide came and spoke to him. And Marcus filmed himself watching the results as they appeared live on his computer screen, and came rushing in after we finished the sitting. Immediately we finished the consultation, and he said, I have measured things that are impossible. You cannot have been speaking, you cannot have had body movements, and you cannot have had logical thought, and there was all of those processes coming out of your mouth through expression. He said, how did you do that? I said, well, I just go to the spirit world, you know. I just leave it up to them. And from that point, he became involved with my school, and we're now doing ongoing experiments within the school. And I just have a phone ringing, Kathy, that I didn't turn off.
No
okay, that's it, I've turned it off. he's doing ongoing programs with us now, and we decided that we would bring together a conference where science and spirit meet, New Frontiers. So we're going to have a multidiscipline conference. We have a gentleman coming from the States, Paul Arand. I don't know if you know him. He's an expert on life between lives. A-R-A-U-N-D, his name is. A-R-A-U-N-D, Paul Arand. And he's flying in from the States to be at the conference as well. And it's going to be unique because we're going to do experiments with headsets, with ECG, with heart rates. Also, we're going to, I need to just throw my phone out the room. Give me 1 minute, Kathy. It's gone. That's one way to deal with it. And so it's quicker to do that than it is to turn it off. We're going to have the delegates at the conference sometimes wearing the headsets, things like that. Because Marcus is already finding that mediums, and by that I mean the collective statement, not just trance, clairvoyance, healers, but the collective statement of mediums think and work differently to everyone else. Something as simple as we've just taken part in a university experiment which has measured eye movement connected to how we read emotions. Now that's not NLP, that's how we know, is someone happy, is someone sad, just by looking at them. How we as an individual read it. I tell you, it's one of those days, isn't it? How we as an individual read the faces. And he's found that mediums read emotions in other people different to Joe Public. Now, that's fascinating, really, isn't it? That our training is making in our everyday lives, doing something that we're not even thinking about, we're doing it differently. At the moment, I've only spoken to him with just a basic look at the readings, and I introduced as many mediums as I could for the research. Mediums look only at the eyes to find someone's emotion. They're not interested in what their smile's doing or what their face is doing. I don't know in the States, but we have a statement, the eyes are the window of the soul. Do you have that statement? And it seems as though mediums collect information in a different way in their everyday lives, which of course we tend to do with the spirit world as well, when we make a relationship with the spirit world. So it's all fascinating stuff. So the mediumistic experiments are growing, and the EEG results are supporting everything else that we're doing. So
sounds very exciting, and you actually had me at Life Between Life. Okay,
all that
stuff. So yes, I definitely wrote down.
Yeah.
Hey, shall we pause?
No, my husband's just coming, so he's going to take the phone call and clear it once and for all. There we go. It's gone once and for all. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Like I said, I'm having some issues outside too. We got long people moving in, so hopefully it's not going to be too loud.
So if anybody's interested in that conference, they can have a look on the website, and then shortly we will have the information about where they can buy the headsets and the software.
And also we'll make sure to put that stuff in the group as well.
Thank you.
So this way it will be easy to access.
Thank you.
Okay, so again, you have to watch Sheila's first interview. You know, she really talks a lot about how she got into the mediumship from the very beginning. So this time we're going to start off with how she went into being guided towards physical mediumship. And I know that this is an ongoing development. And so we're going to have some fun here and learn a lot about what's going on with you.
You know, I've found that my journey's been unique, and I think every medium can say that, but I've sort of fallen into things rather than planned them or gone after them. And very much my physical work was that. As I explained in the last interview, I'm very experienced, very knowledgeable now about the altered states of consciousness. And I mean that in a varied sense. But I'd never been drawn to sit for what is recognised as physical phenomena, and never really had the opportunity to develop in that way. Didn't have the time or the people to sit with that could give sensible feedback for that. And then I had one or two experiences where sitting for my trance speaking and my trance healing, I experienced what I now know was the unconscious state. Now, a lot of trance mediums, as I explained before, think the unconscious state is when they remember nothing, but it's not. The unconscious state is unconscious. You are out of it. You are unconscious. Your physical body is in a state of deep faint. Do you use that word in America? The faint, where you pass out?
Yes.
Okay, where you pass out. And we've since measured it, and that is also proven. You're getting close to what is called coma in the medical sense. And I had a couple of spontaneous experiences of that, and I didn't particularly find them frightening. I just accepted it was a change in my development. And the more I spoke to other people about that experience, they said, oh, why don't you sit for physical? Why don't you sit for physical? And a lot of physical mediums in the old days, and I'm going back to 1900s, would have sat in the unconscious state. We know now, and I know from some of your interviews, that not all physical mediums sit in the unconscious state now. We know that. But there was always been an association for it. So I managed to find a little group of ladies, 3 ladies, who said, well, we'll sit for you to explore it. I never had a regular circle. They were actually more than 300 miles away from where I live. And I saw them about 3 times a year when I was teaching at a particular group. But we took the opportunity to sit during that week once or twice. And things began to, can't honestly say things began to happen in terms of phenomena, but certainly the process began to develop. And we might have 1 or 2 spontaneous things would happen. I can remember one evening a book flying off the shelf and landing in the middle of the room, and some energy would emanate that looked like it could become ectoplasm, but it was all a bit, it was a bit hit and miss, and nothing really tangible. And that went on for maybe 3 years, just 3 times a year. And then I wasn't in with that group anymore. Didn't have that opportunity, so it got left for another couple of years. And then more recently at my own school, some of my students have said, let's sit for your physical. So we've had opportunities where we've created as best we can a seance room, and as best we can quite constructive setup within the room, and we've watched it develop. But what's quite unique, I think, is that every time I sit, there will be different people present. So we're not having the fixed consistency. Aspects will be fixed. The light is beyond our control in the room we're in. So, for instance, if we were to sit at this time of the year, it would be as dark as pulling a set of curtains across a window could produce, and you would still have quite a lot of sunlight. In the winter, you could produce something that's much darker. But during the sitting, light will change quite dramatically from early evening to later night. So all the things that I'd thought should be in a physical circle weren't present. It's a room that we rent, so there are other uses within the room, so the energy of the room isn't fixed. So actually there's a lot of flexibility in the sitting itself. But here's the point, it didn't particularly affect the development. And I know a lot of physical mediums have either trained in very, very fixed environments, fixed light, no light at all in the room, things like that, or only the same people, or only the same time of day. And we've never been able to have any of those things. And yet the development can still be measured. Now, I don't know. Has it slowed things down? I don't know. I don't know if we'd had a fixed environment. But certainly there's still a positivity that it's worth doing. It's at an irregular interval. So it might be 3 times in 1 week and then nothing for 3 months. So all the things that I'd been taught, which wasn't much, didn't apply to me. But we still carried on because we all could see that maybe there was a future in it and the spirit world were giving us instructions. And we've carried on with it. So we're now in that process, we're probably about 3 years in. So
interesting, because everybody says it's got to be this way, that way, in the garden, you know, same people. So that's refreshing to know that there's the possibility that this is happening still, you know, happening with different criteria. You know, it's not the same. So
maybe it would have been quicker. Maybe it would have been smoother. But it is possible. And I'm sure within the group, there are so many people that can't have the ideal conditions. They don't have that possibility. And we don't, not within the environment that I have an opportunity to sit. So I think we can offer the spirit world the best that we can, and they can still work with it to some degree. So the next question would be, what would we have that's happened? So we're certainly having direct voice. And the opportunity that they take there is on any particular evening, they will find a part of the room that presents the right energy to produce the voice box. So, for instance, we sit in what is usually a bedroom, although the furniture is taken out of it, but there are fixed wardrobes. So they will use the wardrobe as the cabinet for the voice. Because the light in the cabinet where I sit is not consistent, but in the wardrobe is more consistent. So they choose an enclosed area of their choice to produce the voice box for the direct voice. So we're having direct voice. Sometimes it will give us direction. Sometimes the direction will come, the teaching will come from the trance voice through myself. We've had physical sightings of ectoplasm, and they will choose the room where maybe the light, part of the room where maybe the light is just a little more stable. So not near the window, not near the door where the outside safety lights still shine, but in a part of the room that is a bit darker and a bit more consistent. Or, for instance, under a chair. So I think the spirit world can learn to use what we offer as long as we can give them some sort of expectation of what we're going to offer. So my instability can be expected. The same instability is there every time.
Oh my goodness. How did you feel like the first time you started to experience in the beginning some phenomena? Like the first thing that's happening.
Yeah. So for me, if we talk about just physical phenomena, not the trance blending that can begin or accompany it, I'm not aware of that at all because I am in the unconscious state. So for me, the physical always means that I am completely out of it. And we've measured that now with the help of the scientists and the EEG in very deep delta and even the gamma, which we call the spirit world interference at my school. That's their presence. We can see with the gamma. I'm not registering that either. So the phenomena I only hear about when I come back. Or if I've come back and come back a bit and been in the trance state, it might be spoken about, and then it might register. It may or may not register with me then.
I always ask everybody if they're recording. They're recording, doing video, audio of their sittings. Are you doing that right now?
No, not at the moment, because it's still very much in that. It's just for us. It's just development. We try hard not to sit for phenomena. We try hard to sit in a very open way So because I often sit with students, if a student has a suggestion, if their mediumship is inspiring them, let's do this tonight, or let's do this tonight, or my colleague who's my chairperson says, I want to introduce this tonight, then we will do it. So we're not really measuring the phenomena as such yet. We're still just offering it very openly to the spirit world. Will that come later? I don't know. It's not a goal at the moment.
Okay. So I always ask this one question, right? Even if it's for physical mediumship. Did you ever find sitting in the power important to develop physical mediumship?
I don't know the answer to that question. I can only answer it very personally from my perspective. So my early development, certainly I've been developing now for just over 30 years for all of my mediumship. And certainly the first 10 years of my development, sitting in the power was a regular discipline. I enjoyed it. It certainly gave a lot to my development as a whole. So has that allowed me to cope with trance, mediumship, and now physical? I think it must have done. I'm happy to get out of the way. And sitting in the power is very much about surrender and giving yourself to whatever the power gives you. So my answer to that must be yes. But maybe that's just personal to me. You know, it was never a hardship for me to even want to have the discipline to sit in the power. So I am the sum total of my whole development now. And I am very happy just to give myself to the spirit world. And so when they encourage this unconscious state, which is really weird, people think, oh, you just go unconscious. But you're at the point of passing out, and somewhere in your brain you say, this is okay, I will continue it. Where the rest of your life, if you're in the shopping mall and you were going to pass out, you'd be taking deep breaths and fanning yourself and finding a bottle of water and fighting it. And I'm actually saying, well, this is to do with the spirit world. Let's see where it goes, you know. Now that makes it sound easy, but it actually took me 18 months of sitting to go from the point of knowing I was going to pass out and allowing myself to pass out. That took 18 months. And we tried all sorts of things, literally holding hands with someone giving you words of encouragement, asking another guide through another trance medium to assist, all sorts of things. But now, crossing from the point of knowing I need to let go and letting go is quite natural for me. And physically has no effect on me. We've measured the heart rate, the blood pressure. Everything that happens, my body is comfortable with. It changes, but my body isn't under any stress with it. And neither when I come back am I under any stress physically. Mentally, I'm more disorganized when I come back from physical than when I come back from trance. But providing I eat and drink quite quickly afterwards, then I'm ready to talk and, you know, go about my normal things.
Okay, well, right now, let me just say, I have the lawnmowers right outside my window. So if you're wondering what that noise is, that's them. They'll be. It just
sounds like my phone ringing, so it's not a problem.
But okay, so when you sit for physical, do you always sit in a cabinet?
We always have a cabinet in the room. And if we look at this intense period of sitting, which has been the last 3 years, I don't like sitting in the cabinet. Now, you're going to love this, and so are your listeners. I'm an ex-camper. I used to go camping in a tent and a caravan. And we have a thing called a toilet tent. And it's a small tent that you go in and everybody knows what you're going in for. Yeah. So I just couldn't get past the fact that a cabinet wasn't a toilet tent. To me, it was like going in the toilet tent. So my agreement with the spirit world was I would sit just outside it. And in fact, the last time we sat, the spirit world asked that the next time I will sit inside. So I'll accept that and I'll do it. But we've always had a cabinet in the room, and we've had the direct voice from the cabinet. And if you like, its energy is directly behind me, but I never sat in it, and I have never sat with the curtains drawn.
That must be amazing to hear the direct voice, you know?
Well, I don't know, because I don't get to hear it.
So many people tell me, you know, you want to be the physical medium, yet you don't hear nothing. You're out, you know, everybody else gets everything. So
it's interesting. We have a little girl who looks after the group called Lucy that comes to speak through the direct voice. And everybody in the group falls in love with her. You know, they're all very emotional and very connected, even though she's quite inefficient at the moment. She's better to speak in the trance state than she is the physical state. But everybody falls in love with her. So when you come back, everybody's in love with Lucy, and they don't really care about you, the medium. But that's a good thing.
What I understand is there's always one energy or one spirit that comes through that brings up the energy. That's the one that makes people laugh, stuff like that. Is Lucy that person that makes people laugh?
Yeah, I don't know about always, but certainly she has a very childlike behaviour within the group, and a very childlike attitude as she talks to people, which, as I say, people fall in love with. In terms of the energy, I'm not sure if it's her or my trance guide, who also comes through with direct voice sometimes, or he comes with the trance voice. I'm not sure who's the boss and who's doing the work. I think it's probably a cooperation between them, but she's certainly, when you talk about laughing, and she's very childlike, and I believe that's quite common in a circle, is to have a child at the physical circle.
I've heard that, like every person I've talked to brings up a child, you know.
Yeah. She plays ball with them and things like that, and they have in their hands, they can feel a physical ball. We're not sure yet whether they can see it, but they can certainly feel as if they have a physical ball within their hands, and they all play ball together in the group and things like that. So she gets them playing like children, which helps. Singing, you know, I know you did a lovely question, what music and what songs do people have in their groups?
I was about to ask you that.
Well, we have music, and I put on your thread that time, we have a lot of rock music and things like that, rather than pretty spiritual songs. But you know, I think unless you can actually sing, unless you have people who can sing in a group, singing doesn't raise the energy. Everybody gets a bit embarrassed, and so I think playing music is preferable. But then, of course, the spirit world often, or the spirit energy often plays havoc with the machines that have to play the music. So we've had that as well, where we think we're playing one song, and on an iPod it will say one song, but actually coming out of the speaker is another song. So you're looking at the iPod, well, I selected this and it's playing this. Well, no, it's not. It's playing something else. So the physical phenomena is in them, the speaker as well, you know.
I've actually had some people that brought up music, something going on with the music, the players, having those things happen. I wanted to talk a little bit about ectoplasm.
Yeah.
So I know that you're still developing.
Yeah.
And I know that you told me just a little bit ago that, you know, an energy started to emanate. You weren't sure if there was some ectoplasm happening here. Is this something that you're looking forward to experiencing?
Well, you see, ectoplasm for any form of physical phenomena, even things like table tilting, Ouija boards, or planchettes, anything like that, there will be ectoplasm present. What they call ectoplasmic rods will be present. A connection between either the energy in the room and the spirit world, or the medium and the spirit world. But mostly you either feel it clairsentiently or see it clairvoyantly. It only comes under the title of physical phenomena when you could see or touch it physically. So ectoplasm must be there already to produce the voice box for the direct voice. If we opened that wardrobe door, would we see the voice box? Maybe not. But it's still producing the physical phenomena, which is the voice coming from the wardrobe. So I think a lot of emphasis for physical mediums when they begin to sit is looking for this masses of ectoplasm pouring out of the mouth or whatever, which are what the old photographs were. and then the materialization would build up. But that was the old days, you know. The world has changed. When we look back at the full materializations, you know, mum or dad building up in the room, we didn't have radio waves pouring through rooms. We didn't have mobile telephone waves pouring through rooms. There wasn't even as much electricity. If you look around your room now and how many plugs and sockets you will have in your room to 60 years ago, you know, the electromagnetic field of a room now is nowhere near as constant as it was 60 years ago. So I'm not saying materializations can't happen or shouldn't happen, but I think the spirit world are evolving as well. So I think the physical phenomena will change in a physical circle from what it did 60 years ago. So maybe we won't see the masses of the pools of ectoplasm building up, or we won't see the hand appearing from the ectoplasm. Maybe it will only be felt in physical form. My group have taken Lucy's hand and felt it as a physical form and even kissed it. But can they see a solid hand? No, but they can feel it. So maybe the energy within the room is not stable for the physical form. Or maybe the medium, who is part of the ectoplasm, of course, their physiology is part of the ectoplasm, maybe our physical bodies are not stable enough, or we don't need to sacrifice that chemical element as much as we once did, because we now have circle members who don't need to see mum build up to say there is phenomena. They're content to say the wrong song's been played, the spirit world are messing with the speakers, and that is good enough to say the spirit world is here. Or maybe dad will speak out of the Bose speakers, and that will be enough to say dad is here. We have a phenomena that happens regularly in the circle, which must involve ectoplasm. It must. But where they can ask the spirit world to control the ticking of the clock. So we have a clock that ticks quite loudly. It's fixed to the wall, can't take it out. So I always say, before we start a circle, get used to the sound. It may change as you become more sensitive, but if the spirit world are doing it, you will really notice it. So they can ask the spirit world to make the clock tick louder, quieter, faster, slower, and it will do that. But the time is always right when we finish. They can ask it to stop ticking, but the time will be the same, the right time when we finish. So ectoplasm must be involved in suppressing the sound itself that comes as the cogs of a clock tick. So, you know, I think I'd love to bring a loved one of yours and materialize them in the room to speak to you. It's got to be absolutely amazing. I've only ever heard stories of that, never seen it. But I think a lot of physical mediums sit with a goal. This is what we're sitting for, to see ectoplasm, to have a materialization, to have direct voice. And maybe the clocks stop ticking and they don't even realize, because they're not looking for that. They're looking for the ectoplasm. So yes, it has to be there, and we have to already have it in our circle. But have we seen it in this muslin-like form? No. So I think we have to be careful how we measure what is a physical circle and what can happen within a physical circle. A lot of mediums now are materializing apports and asports, you know, crystals and things like that. Now, I'm going to say something, but I don't challenge anybody who you've interviewed, Kathy. I don't challenge anybody in my next statement. But we have to ask the question, if the same phenomena is coming at every single seance, are the spirit world doing what we want to please us? That's either as the sitters or the medium, or are the spirit world only capable of producing that phenomena? So for me, in my development, and maybe that's slowing me down, I will never know. Every time we sit with no expectation whatsoever, and we offer whatever the spirit world want to do with the energy to do it. So maybe nothing will happen in our seance room, but it will happen in another seance room because my group have offered the energy to support something. So that's why we're not into filming or recording yet. I believe when you do that, you set a very strong expectation that something is going to happen.
I totally agree with that. I think there's a lot of the people that I've interviewed, I think there's an intention there, and some have the same intention that you have, which is expect nothing, no expectation. But I've noticed that, you know, if they're at-port mediums or the mediums that are physical at-port medium, you're doing that, or, you know, focusing on one area, and that's the only area that they want to go. But I kind of like your take on that. Just no expectation, and allow the spirit world to bring through what they want to bring through, really.
I think another thing that's quite important for me, Kathy, and again, it's quite controversial, but it's personal to me. So I don't challenge anybody in my next statement, and I don't label anybody in my next statement. But I watched two excellent, what I thought at the time, and I believed through my mediumship at the time, I watched two excellent physical trance seances with phenomena. At the time, extremely comfortable with what I saw, extremely touched by what I saw. Shortly after that, I saw a third one, and in a very small room, and I was right where I could witness everything, and I, again, was very comfortable with what I'd seen. And on that third occasion, because I was there as a teacher, I was invited as a teacher. The first two I wouldn't have done it, but the third one I was invited as a teacher. I was talking to the spirit world. Through my clairvoyance, I was talking to the spirit world and having a conversation with them. And I left that seance quite happy. I returned to the same venue afterwards, and the person, the medium, told me the seance I'd seen before was fake and showed me how they'd made it fake. And I was deeply shocked. So shocked, I thought I must be a rubbish medium. And this isn't so long ago, only a few years ago. I thought, how can my mediumship have read it wrong? My mediumship is too good. I'm not being arrogant, but I know when the spirit world's there. How could I have got this wrong? Because it was cleverly done, but it was fake. And I took a long walk with the spirit world and had a long chat with them for about 2 hours. I walked through a forest saying to the spirit world, you have to show me what I got wrong here. How did I read this third seance wrong? And they said to me, you looked for the spirit world and we were there, but you didn't look for us in the phenomena. And we would have been intelligently in the phenomena, and I hadn't looked for them in the phenomena. They were in the room trying to stop it being a fake seance, trying to be present, and that's who I was communicating with. But I didn't look in the phenomena to say, where is the spirit world in the phenomena? So that rocked my whole opinion of sitting for the physical. And that's why I decided then that it would be completely open. We don't have any tools in the room. Unless the spirit world asks us to bring a trumpet or anything in, we have nothing for them to play with, nothing for them to do. We sit as a group of people, because I think that's, for me, the best way to keep it open. And that's all very personal. I'm not challenging anybody else's validity or anything like that there. But it taught me a huge lesson. So that was where I got this attitude, well, I'll sit for you, but we have to sit in a very open environment. And of course, we have a lot of light in our room, so it can't be so easy to commit fraud.
Well, wow, that's very interesting that you had that experience, but I loved your answer. You felt the spirit world there, but you weren't looking to totally get it.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I've interviewed, they talk about health and physical mediumship. How is that for you? I mean, have you noticed a difference? Has your health been affected by developing?
Yep, okay. So my first answer is no, not at all. My health hasn't. We do know that blood sugar changes, heart rate changes, blood pressure changes. We know that all of those things can be measured as changing when you sit. But what you have to look at is the lifestyle of a medium, and particularly a working medium, and particularly a trance or a physical medium. You spend a lot of time sat on your backside. You know, you do. You spend a lot of time sitting down and sitting very still. And add that to my teaching day, and I could spend from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night and maybe achieve 1,000 steps in a day. And that would be a good day. So I learned very early on that for me, food was important. I don't like to eat when I'm working, whether it be clairvoyantly, trance or physical. Certainly with physical, because it's in the unconscious state, so your body is physically collapsed. I would vomit. Definitely I would vomit, because my stomach would be so squashed and digestion stops completely. But because I don't like to eat when I work at all, I try now to eat sensibly rather than do nothing, which is what I used to do, which of course affects your blood sugar badly as well. So I've tried to bring some stability in, and I always try to eat something sensible as soon as I finish, rather than sugar, which is what you're drawn to. So the lifestyle can make you unwell, but I don't believe the sitting makes you unwell. You know, a lot of mediums work late at night. They work between 7 and 10 at night, you know. Circle work is often in the evening. Demonstrations are often in the evening. So your sleep patterns are disrupted. You know, I don't know about anybody else, but after any sort of trance work, I'm as high as a kite afterwards, physical as well. I want to go party and disco. So I'm not going to be going to sleep within an hour of finishing a demonstration at 9 o'clock at night. So maybe 1 or 2 o'clock the next morning, I might be able to fall asleep. If I'm up at 6 or 7, that has an effect. So it's not the sitting for the physical that has an effect, it's the lifestyle, and you have to pay attention to that and try and do something about that. And if we look at a lot of the famous mediums like Albert Best, Gordon Higginson, if we look at the Fox sisters, even if we go back to the Fox sisters, a lot of them use drink, a lot of them use smoking, a lot of them use sugar to try and get that balance back afterwards. And it's not the physical that's caused the problem, it's the solution that's caused the problem, you know. Alcohol, as a lot of mediums, Helen Duncan, a lot of mediums used alcohol to be able to switch off from the sensitivity. And it's that causes the damage. So I could easily be that. It would be easy to use those things. Oh, if I'll have a couple of glasses of wine, then I can go to bed a couple of hours earlier. But I try not to. I mean, I don't always succeed, but I try not to. So fortunately, I always feel great afterwards, always.
That's good, that's good.
Yeah.
What was your first words that came through?
Physically, in the physical mediumship. Yeah. I honestly can't remember, but I would say it was probably Lucy, the little girl, and she probably would have said something like, "Hello, Charlie," because she nearly always starts with that. Charlie is the gentleman who's in charge of my group, my colleague who sits there. He's, if you like, the chairperson of my circle. And she often says things like, "I love you, Charlie." So I would imagine that was what some of the first words that were said.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so how long after sitting for physical did you start to begin to develop any phenomena? How long did that take?
Oh, well, you see, because I sat so erratically at the beginning, 3 times a year, you know. So I think probably in the second year, we began to have 1 or 2 things happen. Were they dramatic? Not particularly. They were more seeds to encourage you to keep going, you know. I think really we're now talking of something like 6 years in. And again, this isn't regular sitting, it's very irregular. We're probably 6 years in and we would have something every time now. I've only recently begun to sit. I travel a lot to teach, and I've recently taken 2 opportunities to sit with groups I don't know, really taught them, you know, this is an unusual environment for me. I don't have my usual helpers in the room. Let's see if we can get something. And Lucy has visited on both occasions with direct voice. So it's not public by any means. It's it's an environment I know of, and I know the students that are sitting with me, but it's a strange environment.
Yeah, I mean,
So it's been slow.
It sounds exciting though, you know.
Oh, very.
To me, they'd be like, what? I'd be super excited. Okay. When you're coming back, because you're gone.
Yep.
How do you come back? I mean, do you just slowly come back, or is it very quickly?
No, the spirit world will usually tell the room goodbye. So they will announce they're stepping back. That's usually through the physical voice, the direct voice. They will tell the room that they're stepping back. And then probably 80% of the time, I will then come back to what I would call my trance speaking place, although it's a little bit distorted because it's not as pure as if I was going for that purpose. And my guide, who would always come at that time, will come and talk. But he talks very blandly, very everyday, almost like settling me down at a rest stop on the way back. And we'll spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes there. And then I will come back, which is a more familiar route for me. I will come back from that place to my presence in the room. So overall, probably 10 minutes to come back, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending on how long the evening's been. And then immediately, I'm not as back as I would be after trance. Immediately, my emotions are very raw. Somebody could say to me, well, that wasn't as good as last time, and I could burst out crying, but they've not actually said it was bad. They're just saying last time was brilliant. Okay. So I have to observe that now. We take a little care there when I first come back to the room, and then 10 minutes later, have a drink, have something to eat, and then I'm good to go and mix with everyone and talk to everyone. So it's quite quick, but you could measure it, you know, as something like 10 or 15 minutes, I think.
I know we were talking earlier about apports. Is this something that you may want to have happen, even though you have no expectation, or have you experienced being in a seance with apports?
Okay. So the only seance where I was present and there were apports was the fraudulent one. So we can't count that.
Okay.
Have we had apports or asports, you know, one being from the spirit world and one being from elsewhere, you know, dematerialized and rematerialized in the room is an apport. An asport is directly from the spirit world. So it's something that hasn't touched this world. As I've said, Lucy will play with a ball and people can feel the physical ball. As yet, they can't see it. So that's probably the closest we've had, that will be an asport, that will be a spirit ball when it comes. But at the moment, we haven't had it completely visually physical, only they can feel it as a physical ball. They can feel it, they know it's a tennis ball because they can feel the fur and the lines that you have, and they know it's hard enough that it will bounce just by feeling it. and we've had them all feel it before they say what it is, so that it's not a hysterical yes I agree. They all come up with the same answer. So that's probably the closest we've had to, and I think that will be an asport. That will be something from the spirit world, a spirit ball, if you like.
And thank you for explaining the difference of both. So.
Yes, and a lot of people don't hear the asport, they only hear the apport. There's some very famous stories with apports, with things like circle leaders who have lost a key or lost a piece of jewellery, and then it's apported into the physical circle. You know, it appears in the circle. So it's been dematerialised and then rematerialised. So there's quite a lot of documented stories of that. Asports, of course, well, that would be lovely if we could get science involved with seeing if there's anything different in that, you know, something that could be measured. That proves it's come from the spirit world. That would be lovely, wouldn't it?
That would be. How do you prepare yourself before you sit for physical?
Okay. So for me, it's usually at the end of a teaching day. So I've been working. So during that day, I pay a little attention to, I normally do private consultations in my break time. I won't do that. So I have a little bit more rest time during the day, where normally I just work continuously. I don't eat. I don't eat at all during the day. I will drink, but I don't eat at all. That's very personal. I don't think that's a requirement for all physical meetings. If you're diabetic, you would have to eat. But I choose not to eat during that day, or if I do, it's very, very small and very light. And then about 1 hour before, I don't sit, but I want to go into my own space. You know, I'll go off to my own bedroom, away from the noise of the students. I like to prepare the room because it's almost like putting my uniform on. You know, I'm putting on my work clothes by preparing the room. So I get the room and I get the music in there playing that I want. And then about 10, 15 minutes before the seance start, because they're not allowed to enter one by one, they all come in as a group. I will then go into the seance room and begin to talk to the spirit world and to allow my music to begin to work with me. Now, one of my wishes was that I wanted to know if I experienced deep delta during the state, because this is where we can have no conscious interaction. We can't interfere. And deep delta is coma. So we know from medical coma, all that stays present is usually the hearing and not necessarily the cognition, the recognition of what is being said. But the hearing still is there, but you can't necessarily say, my mum was talking to me when I was in a coma, or things like that. And the scientist, the neuroscientist, came to a group and he said, can I come in while you prepare? So I said yes. So I had the EEG cap on at the time. I was walking around the room, to my knowledge, fully conscious, listening to the music, getting myself in my focused state, but not beginning to sit in any way. And he said, you need to look at the computer. He said, sit down and move your head to look at the computer. And I did. He said, well, you've just moved and that's not showing on the computer. And he said, you already have some deep delta waves. He said, how can that be? That is just not possible, because you're still present. You're still processing. There are still parts of your brain that are active, but there is a part of your brain that is already in deep delta. I said, well, then I must be in an altered state of consciousness. He said, well, clearly you are. But he said, you cannot have deep delta. You can only have deep delta when you are in either the unconscious state or the coma state. So he said, this is impossible. I now need to change what I teach people. Now, I'm not saying I'm brilliant. There's possibly other physical mediums out there that are achieving that. But what we're saying is that as a medium who's then trained for physical mediumship, and in my case, that's come through extensive work with, extensive experience with the trance state and the deeper trance state, there is a part of my brain that knows what to do. We're going to sit for physical. There is a part of my brain that is preparing all by itself without me turning on a button or me giving it the opportunity or me saying I'm sitting. there's a part of my brain that is already working in the way that it needs to work. Is that being controlled by the spirit company? Or is that just an automatic response now for me as a physical medium? So when they say physical mediumship takes time to develop, I believe that's true, but not because it's difficult, because it needs to become very natural for us, as natural as breathing. We don't think about which bits of our brain are keeping us breathing. It's doing it on a very automatic level. So I believe the reason it takes time is to do with your relationship with the spirit world. And that's why sitting in the power must be relevant, because that's where you can so often build the relationship with yourself and the spirit world. And that's also why I think we mustn't have any expectations, because we don't want that part of our brain active, the expectation part. We want our brain to learn to do this thing that allows us not to be human for a while, that allows us to be so close to our own spirit that our human body goes into a very, very, a truly automatic response, such as breathing, you know.
I love how you explain things, because I'm sitting there thinking, wow, you're right. Yeah. So.
Well, I have to give thanks to Marcus, who's taught me a lot and given me another language to explain things that I felt I knew, and now I know I knew, because he's giving me the science to support it. Without those measurements, I perhaps wouldn't have had it so clearly myself. I would have had it going on and knowing it was going on, but not so able to express it. We need science in mediumship more and more these days.
I'm interviewing a lot of people now that they're all getting they're getting measured.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like a normal for everybody now.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. It's very exciting.
What I like about our measurements is Marcus is not interested in mediumship. Doesn't want to be a medium. He just is interested he's a neuroscientist. He's a psychologist. He's a doctor of medicine. This guy is only interested in us as a human being. He's not interested in us as a spirit, and he's spiritual by nature, but he's not interested in the spirits that communicate with us. His spiritual pathway is something almost on a faith and a religious level. He's not interested in this interaction with the spirit world or recognition of the spirit world. He's going straight to God for his pathway. So what's really nice is that he's only looking at us as a medium, So it's factual. It's purely factual what he offers us.
Okay, so how many guides that come through you regularly?
So for me, 99% of the time I have one guide that does everything. I have visitors, Lucy for the physical. I have a healer who sometimes joins me, and very, very occasionally, if I'm giving a trance consultation, someone's loved one, your mom, your dad, or someone like that will come. But the majority of my work, teaching, clairvoyance, healing, physical, it's all through the one guide.
One guide, okay. All right, so this is an interesting question. In your development, whether that's trance or physical, have any pioneers from the past come through or were felt near, whether sitting for trance or sitting for physical?
Okay, that's a difficult question for me, because if I answer it truthfully, I know that I will sit here before you, Kathy, and be judged by many, many people.
Oh, goodness. I don't like
Well, sadly, that is a true statement. But I will answer it truthfully, because I don't play games. So my one guide would be recognised by many, many people. But please don't ask me to give the name, because, as I said to you, my goal at the moment is not to talk about that work publicly. So, but he would be recognised by many, many people. But I don't want my ego or my ability or my teaching skills to be measured that I'm great because I have that one person. I don't believe he would only work with me. I'm sure he would work with other people. But people begin to quantify you if you say you have a famous guide,
You know what? But it's so exciting. Like I could feel your energy. I'm like, oh, I'm so happy for you because even if you're sitting for trance, sitting for physical, and you sense an energy there, and you have an idea who that energy is, it's a wonderful feeling for them to even pop in.
Yeah.
And so, if for someone to work with you, and I totally understand you not wanting to say names, but I just wish, I really wish, and for all of everyone that's watching the interviews, that the judging.
I know.
And love and be so excited for, like, I'm so happy for you're happy, you know?
Yeah. It should be like that. And I don't want to make this interview in any way down. And again, that statement is personal to me. You know, other people will stand up and be proud and shout it to the world. I know for me, that judgment hurts, so I'm not going to open myself up to it. But when we talk about guides, there's a really interesting story that should be shared. And we talk about Silver Birch. You know Silver Birch? And you've probably read the Silver Birch books. Everybody reads at least one in their development, if not all of them. And Silver Birch was around 1900, just before 1900 and just after, in his circle. And Silver Birch came as a Native American Indian in full dress, full ceremonial dress. And he came and materialized in his physical group. He gave trance, all the books, the Silver Birch books were all scribed through trance mediumship. And I think most mediums refer to Silver Birch in either their development or their teaching. The philosophy is still true now as it was then. But what a lot of people don't know is the story of the last seance. And they agreed as a group that the work as the group had been done and the group was going to break up after several years. And they were going to go off to do their own things. And that Silver Birch would make his last visit. And he came as the North American Indian. And it's written that in the last seance, he then dematerialized and rematerialized as someone else. And it's never been told who the someone else was, whether it was famous or ordinary, nobody knows. And the scribes wrote that Silver Birch said, I had to come as a North American Indian because it was the only way you would listen to what I had to say. But I never was, and I never had an association. But if you think about 1900, we didn't have Buddhism, we didn't have, religion was almost corrupt at that time financially. The scientists were almost unreachable, education was quite limited. So to be a well-known scientist, the ancient philosophers were only shared with the educated people, not with the man in the street. So the only genre that was recognized as being spiritual at that time was the North American Indians, and you would know more about that than myself. The history was at that time, they were defending the sacred burial grounds against the white man, and there was this big power struggle about their faith and being suppressed by the white man. So the Native American Indians were known certainly throughout Europe, but in England and the States, were known as a spiritual nation who lived a spiritual life. So he came as that genre so that he would be listened to. And in the last seance, it is said and written, he wasn't ever connected to the North American Indians.
Very interesting.
The personality was whoever he was, through Silver Birch, the North American Indian. The philosophy was the same, but he was seen and described himself as somebody who would be listened to. So we have to think about when we announce, I work with somebody well known, a great pioneer or whatever, maybe they're not. Maybe they are, maybe they're not.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that story too. Thank you. So do you find that philosophy that comes to you important?
Certainly through my trance mediumship. We haven't had philosophy through the physical yet. but through the trance mediumship we have. And the philosophy that tends to come for me would be educational and often personal to the people in the room. So it's not general, forgive me, love and light stuff. It will be pertinent to the people in the room. So yes, I think the spirit world have a different perspective on our lives completely. You know, we may see, forgive me, there's been some terrible shootings in your country, and they are tragedies, real tragedies for the relatives. And for your nation to know that it goes on, and for the world to know that it goes on. But the spirit world won't be looking at the tragedy of the death. They will be looking at what is going to be learned. They will going to be, the person who's been killed is taken care of. But they're in a good place now. Their families aren't. But the spirit world will see the greater picture, what's being learned. I'm not saying they caused it or approved of it. But they won't see it as the worst thing that could happen. They will see the worst thing that could happen is that nobody learns from it. That will be the worst thing that could happen. So when they bring their philosophy back, it won't even be necessarily forgive the perpetrator or give healing to the families. It will be about what have you learned as an individual from that, from the pain that you're feeling, you know? So they have a very different perspective. And I think so often we've all got problems in our lives. And I think so often we get so caught in our problems that they feel bigger than they are, or more impossible to resolve than they are. And the spirit world will come along and say things like, well, what happens if you lose your house? You know, have you got a friend that's got a spare bed? Well, then you're going to have a roof over your head. Have you got someone who's going to give you a meal? Well, you're going to have food in your stomach. So if you've lost your job and you've lost your house, is it so bad? Is it as bad as the person who hasn't got a roof over their head or hasn't got food in their stomach? You know? So, yes, I do. I think their philosophy is very different to my own, certainly, and teaches me all the time, and I know for the listeners would teach them as well. I would love to have the direct voice philosophy, because then it would be really pure. Although I'm told I'm 95% out of the way, when I do my trance, I would love to have that purity of direct voice, you know.
I love philosophy, and I love because it makes you think about things.
Yeah.
And, you know, the day that starts happening for you, Sheila, we will be having a part 3 interview, okay?
Well, I think we'll be recording that when that starts happening, definitely.
For you on that one. Okay, what has been the biggest mistake you have made in your development of physical mediumship so far?
Only one, you want me to tell you? Only one. First of all, my biggest mistake was I kept saying, why me? You know, I was already working full-time as a medium. I was already doing a lot of work with my trance. I'm teaching, you know, and I thought, well, why me? I can't give the dedication that I'm told you must give. You know, there are other people who can serve you better. So that was my big mistake, not feeling adequate at the beginning. I had to have a lot of support from people around me. I'm very lucky. The people around me tell me off. They don't say nice things to me. They give me a kick up the backside, and that's actually more useful than being nice to you. So that was probably my biggest mistake, was very personal. The next one was that if nothing happened, I took it personally that I'd let people down. And I couldn't quite accept that people were willing to give their time to sit and nothing happened. And they kept saying, you don't realise the emotions, like you're saying, the excitement that we're feeling, waiting for something to happen. We can feel the spirit world trying. So you don't know that because you're not here. And I was always apologising after a seance, so taking it back down a couple of steps afterwards. So I think I spent a lot of time doing that, messing around with my own emotions, really. Practically the biggest mistake, don't know that, because I think we always learn every single time I sit. We're going to do this next time, or we're not going to do that next time, or we need to work on this, or we need to work on that next time. Probably the best piece of advice I can give is for somebody to have a circle leader who is a quality medium. And I'm very fortunate that I have that. I have 2 or 3 quality mediums around me. And we had 1 or 2 disagreements over the time when eventually he said to me, look, who's in charge, you or me? And he said, I'm present in the room. So it's about time you realised I'm in charge and you're not. Now get on with it. Okay. And from that point on, it became a lot much more emotional. I surrendered to him rather than to the spirit world. And that made it a lot easier for me. It's the teacher in me. I want to control the room and make sure everybody's having a good time, you know. So there's lots of big mistakes, and they were delaying. They delayed things, I'm sure of that. Did they stop it? No. And are we carrying on? Yes. You know, maybe we have to have the mistakes to learn, you know.
You know what? Every person that I've interviewed says the same thing, but I always like to ask that because then, you know, people that are watching this, that are, you know, developing, you know, that's that part of you where you know, you're not going to go in, everything's going to be perfect. Everything, every time you sit is going to be perfect, and you're going to experience all of this stuff. And so I love asking that question because that's where you're just like, yeah, you know what, this sucked, or, you know, yeah, I did this too much and I shouldn't have done that. And, you know, but I love, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Something I would just like to highlight, if I may, Kathy, and I know I've seen it with some of your interviews as well, is a lot of physical mediums have this very controlled environment. Now, I don't know if it's right or wrong. I only know from my own experience. They have this then there's this fear. What happens if that controlled environment is disturbed? Because there are old stories of the medium, like with Helen Duncan, when the raids happened, when the police raided the seances, where they were very ill or they got burnt with ectoplasm returning. But I think, again, we're in a modern world where there are constantly disturbances in any room, unseen disturbances. So, for instance, if you're in an apartment block and someone telephones the apartment next door, there will be the electromagnetic wave will come through your room and cause a change in the frequency in your room. So there are modern day disturbances, like you with the lawnmower. You know, it's not ideal. We heard it, but it didn't stop the interview. Maybe people had to listen a bit closer. Maybe some people, it took their thoughts to the lawnmower, something like that with my telephone. But it didn't stop the interview. It might have disturbed it a bit, but it didn't stop the interview. We've had a fire alarm go off, and I'm in the unconscious state, and they've had to bring me back quite quickly. It wasn't the best experience of my life, but I survived it and I'm still here. We took extra care. We've had a telephone go off in the seance room when I'm in a deep trance, and it's disturbed the evening, but only temporarily. The book jumped off. I told you when I was first sitting, a book jumped off the shelf. They all screamed. Everybody's heart raced a bit. But I think in this modern world, if we are prepared for such things, then I think it can be, the spirit world can help us to cope with them. The ideal situation is the ideal situation. You know, maybe that's complete darkness and complete silence. But I believe the spirit world can cope in a modern world, because you and I could have physical phenomena now. The spirit world could switch off the link between us right now. Nothing to do with thunderstorm or our internet. It could just switch off because the spirit world say, let us show you we can do it. If the energy was right, they could do physical phenomena right now. I mean, I have a sun lamp that I put on to have enough light in the room. I've got the window open. I can hear wind chimes. You're in your office. You know, we're not in those protected environments, but they could do physical phenomena right now. So I think a lot of mediums sit with fear when they sit for physical. And from my experience, there's no reason for it.
Well, I like how you explain things. I like it because you make us think that it doesn't have to be this one way. You're experimenting and you're leaving no expectation. and it seems things are happening for you. And I can't wait to see how you evolve with this, because man, can you imagine, you say, this is happening, we're experiencing ectoplasm, our conditions aren't completely dark, or, you know, who knows what could happen. But you're allowing the spirit world to come in and experiment. That's what's happening, you know? So I don't know why, but I love talking to you, Sheila. It's just so easy. As long as I don't have interruptions going on, you know, like hearing the movers now. But it's, your energy is beautiful, just beautiful. And I love how you share everything of your experience. But I do have one more question for you. For the developing physical mediums that are just starting, wanting to know more, what advice could you give them to develop?
Yeah. For me, the very best piece of advice is to get good sitters, even if it's only one. That's more important than the room. You want somebody who's going to give you, I say the same with the trance circle, somebody who's going to give you very good, very sensible feedback. A medium is good for physical circle rather than just an observer, because if you have a medium, they can see if something is going on mediumistically or hear it mediumistically, maybe before it's physical. So they may say, I can hear a voice, but I know I'm hearing it clairaudiently. Or I can feel this happening, but I know I'm feeling it clairsentiently. I can see this happening, but I know I'm seeing it clairvoyantly. So I think a good medium as a sitter would be and even if it's only one, don't sit if ever you feel uncomfortable in the environment. And I mean that with the people, with the room, with yourself. If something is telling you you're not right, don't sit. Because it's not that it's dangerous, but your emotions are vulnerable. So if something doesn't go as well as it should in whatever way, you will be affected on a personal level, because your emotions, your logic is so shut down when you come back that you will judge it incorrectly. So always sit when you want to, how you want to. I feel sorry for the public physical mediums who have these booked seances, you know, where they sell tickets. I feel sorry for them, not excited for them, because they have to say on Wednesday, even if I don't feel well enough, or even if I'm tired or I've got jet lag, I've got to sit. And I think that must be very challenging for them. Not for the spirit world, but for them personally. So I think if you feel right, then you do it and you follow your own instincts. Don't have a routine, have your routine. And if you feel right, then you're offering the best of you to the spirit world. And then the next piece of advice will be patient. Not because it takes a long while, but it takes, maybe things are happening beyond your understanding before they're part of your understanding. And be sensible. You know, we know where physical mediumship is concerned, the weird and the wacky exists, doesn't it? So be sensible, be grounded about it. You know, if it's real, you'll know it's real. Don't say, is it? I'm not sure. Could it be? If it's real, you will know it. You will really know it. So be patient to wait for that, you know.
All great advice. I'm telling you now. Everybody says, you know, at least some of the same things, you know. Yeah. But, Sheila, thank you for doing this. I want to talk about how members can connect with you. So this will be www.earthgemstar.co.uk. From that site, her website, you can also purchase the CDs. We talked about 5 different CDs. Everything to connect with Sheila will be under the post, all the links. So you can easily connect with her. Part 1 interview on the trance development for Sheila is going to be linked there as well. So the YouTube video will be there. Also, it's in the group, our group, Sacred Dancer Trance. So again, Sheila, thank you.
Asking me, Kathy.
We'll also be looking forward to more information on your, what is it, the seminar or?
Conference for next year.
Conference for next year.
Yeah. If anybody connects with me on the website or the Facebook, it'll all be coming up very, very shortly.
Perfect. And we'll definitely make sure to double check the CDs listed in the group's posts, okay? So I'll definitely make sure that's happening. But thank you for everything. I love talking with you. I love your energy and how you share. I don't know, it's just so easy how you make me think now. So now I'm going to leave here and be like, wow, I'm going to think about a lot of this stuff. But obviously, I'm going to have to watch it again. I always watch it again and take notes because sometimes I get distracted with making sure I'm up on the questions here. But okay, Sheila, thank you. You have a fabulous rest of your day, and we will talk soon. Okay?
And good luck with your move.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.